I decided to talk about Mishi this coming Memorial Day in a Zoom meeting for the family. Occurred to me only last Thursday. I hesitated quite a lot about it. It's not easy for me. And although so many years passed since Mishi was killed. And for you, we decided to make the presentation in English. I gathered since Friday morning. I was working hard, gathering over 40 pictures of Mishi, photos from since he was born till July 67. A lot of work. And here I will start saying that through telling about his life and by the pictures, I hope that those of you who only heard about him will grasp what a personality was and understand how much we loved him. Mishi was born, as you know, in Geneva. Our father, Deje David Stern, came from Hungary to Germany to study mechanical engineering. He met there my mother, Dora. They got married at the end of 1930. My father, Papi, received a job in a big plant, engaged in structural heating design and planning. Among others, he was involved also in the planning of the heating system in the Palais des Nations, the United Nations in Geneva. Mishi was born in 1935, when Puli was 2 years and 3 months old. I was born only about 8 years later. My brother was named Michael in Hebrew. We in the family called him Mishi. Later, friends called him either Misha or Micha or Mike. If he was alive today, he would have been almost 85 years old. In the summer of 1937, when Mishi was not yet 2, and Puli was 4. My mother, Mami, we called her, she took them to visit her parents in Israel. They left Germany in time and lived in Akko. They went by ship and stopped over for overnight in Alexandria. We were a happy family in Geneva, so Puli and Mishi kept telling me. I have no memories of these 2 first years of my life. Mami was a qualified nurse, but she didn't work. She was a housewife and mother. They had many, many friends and kept Jewish tradition. The only thing that really disturbed the family happiness was World War II. My father, Papi, was worrying a lot about his family in Hungary, 2 sisters and 3 brothers. He tried unsuccessfully to bring them to Switzerland. And of course, my mother worried with him as well. Actually, by the way, she visited the family with Puli in 1934, before Mishi was born. Probably because of his anxiety, so I was told, he got severe ulcers. He was hospitalized for a few weeks, and in February 1945 he died, age 42. Mishi was a little over 9 years old. Puli was close to 12, and I was not yet 2 years old. My mother decided to immigrate with us to Israel to join her parents and her sister Friedel who was married already with Baruch Bag, and they were parents to Nurit, then 3 years old, and Rani, 1 year old. On June 19, 1945, we arrived by a ship in Israel. Baruch was waiting for us, Baruch Bag. Mommy did not have any money, almost. With a small insurance she bought a small plot in Herzliya, near what was later built the Sharon Hotel. Mishi and Puli were accepted to Ben Shemen boarding school that belonged to the Jewish Agency, and lived and studied there for 4 years. Mishi was then almost 10 years old. Mommy and I lived during these years, 4 years, with Baruch and Friedel in their 2-bedroom apartment. Very small, about 80 square meters, with only 1 bathroom. And we were there with Baruch and Friedel's children, Nurit and Rani, and with our grandmother, whom we called Muti. Our grandfather died shortly after we arrived. Imagine 4 adults and 3 children in this about 80 square meters apartment. We have always been very, very grateful to the kindness of our aunt and uncle. Mommy, by profession, she was a nurse, but because of difficulties of learning Hebrew, she didn't succeed to work in the Asuta hospital where she started. So she found a very nice family who owned and directed hotel in Tel Aviv, and she was taking care of the 2 children about my age. Really nice people, and she became very friendly with them. And Friedel actually took care of the 3 of us, of Nurit, Rani, and myself, and our grandmother, Muti, was a cook. Ben Shemen was an excellent children's village. Ben Shemen was established in 1927 by Dr. Lehmann, an impressive educator from German origin. After the war, many refugee children came to live there as well. 4 or 5 children shared a room. They studied in the mornings and worked in agriculture in the afternoons, working with cows, sheep, vegetable garden, and flower plantation. But they also received education, a great education for human values and Zionism, music, arts, and literature. They had a big chorus. Mishi played the violin, and Puli played the piano. They also were organized in small groups to read books and then discuss them. You see the photo of the library with a group of children around the table. I guess that the education Mishi and Puli as well received in Ben Shemen, with the emphasis on work values along with education in humanities, contributed a great deal to the personality, to Mishi's and Puli's personality as they grew up and became adults. During Independence War, the village was under siege, and the Arab villages from the surrounding were shooting in the area. So eventually all the children were transferred to another boarding school near Netanya, near the seashore, and here is a picture of Mishi there. So the last year of Ben Shemen, they actually were there. With the initiative of Dr. Lehman, the founder and the director of Ben Shemen, a 50 minutes film on Ben Shemen was produced in 1947. Actually, it was a sort of a documentary film with children of the village participating. But in order to make it more interesting, there is a story about a boy who was accepted, a refugee boy who was accepted to Ben Shemen after the war. The film title was Adama. Later, it was re-edited by the Spielberg Studios with the title Tomorrow's a Wonderful Day. You may find it on YouTube. At the end of this presentation, you will be surprised with a very short part from this film with Mishi in it. Occasionally, Mishi and Puli came for weekends or holidays to Tel Aviv, and then they came also to the apartment in Shlomo HaMelech Street and slept on mattresses in the corridor of the apartment. Here you can see the photos taken from them in the balconies, and Baruch with them in the Yarkon River. Baruch used to take us children every Friday afternoon to either the zoo, which was close near what is the municipality of Tel Aviv now, or to boats on the Yarkon River. I have very good memories from this time, Friday's afternoon. The bar mitzvah of Mishi was celebrated in Tel Aviv, in the small synagogue Baruch used to go, very close to where they lived. And then coffee and cakes in the famous Roval coffee house that belongs to friends of Friedel and Mami, also from German origin. I have a vague memory of Mishi, who was still not very tall. He grew up later. When Mishi was 14 years old and Puli 16, Mami sold the plot in Herzliya and bought a tiny flat in Tel Aviv, about 20-25 square meters, 1.5 small rooms, no door in between them. Main thing was that we were finally, all four of us, together, but just for 2 years. Actually, the happiest in my childhood, I think. Mishi and I shared the half room, and Puli and Mami slept on sofas in the living room. But I remember it was a very lovely flat, organized very nicely. Mishi studied in the same high school where I studied later, Ironi Daled, in the north part of Tel Aviv. Mishi was very, very good, excellent in human studies, literature, history, and in English, but made himself major in mathematics and physics since he decided from early age to become an architect, and knew that in order to be accepted to the Technion, he should pass the exam in mathematics. Here you can see the photo of Mishi just before the matriculation in mathematics, which he hated. Once the history teacher, Neumann, summoned my mother to meet him. She came, and he complained to her that Mishi got only very good and not excellent. Actually, I remember once after I finished high school, Neumann was also my teacher, and while Mishi was later after the Technion in Geneva, I met this teacher on the bus. He knew that Mishi was in Geneva, and he said to me, well, I suppose that he will not come back. And it made me angry. I told him, Mishi is so connected to the family and he loves the country, and I'm sure he will come back. And he did. During high school, Mishi acquired a group of very close friends. With most of them, he stayed in touch all his life. I, as his little sister, knew most of them. I used to be a sort of Mishi's secretary, sent me here and there to bring to get. So I knew them. And sometimes Mishi took me with him when it was suitable, like going to a fair, or even he took me to the wedding of the first one among them who got married very young, Danny Neumann, his name was, who married Rivka. Mishi was very, very friendly, a very friendly, sociable person, very, very much loved by his friends. Mishi was quiet, very humble, very dedicated to his friends, and also actually was interesting and fun. His friends had a good time with him and together. When Mishi was 16 years old, Puli 18, and I 8 years old, Mommy married again. She married Yosef Averbuch. Was much, much older than she was. Unfortunately, we left our small apartment and moved to his in Ben Yehuda Street. Puli then joined the army, and though she served in Tel Aviv, had to move to military dormitory. The apartment actually was much, much bigger than our small apartment, or even bigger than Baruch and Friedel's apartment, but not big, really. For us, this match was not good. Mishi did not get along with Yosef at all. But the three of us loved Mommy very, very much, and believed that she married him because she was physically exhausted, and maybe Yosef promised her to support us, to take care of us for everything, which eventually it promises that he did not keep, really. This photo, the three photos you see here of us three, were taken as presents to my mother on her birthday, which was June 29. In the first photo, you see three of us in Geneva. On the second, Mishi is I am 6 and Mishi is 14. And it was taken when we lived in the small apartment. I remember that my mother was very glad when she received the photo, and I said, well, it cost only 2.5 lira. And on the third picture, the third was taken when Mishi was just before the matriculation in mathematics that you saw the picture before. And Polly was already an officer in the intelligence. Polly and I resembled very much in our character, I think. Though in the appearance, I resemble more Mishi and my father. Polly and I were just good girls, always very, very subdued, and we always tried to behave as expected. While Mishi was really different. He was not punctual, he was very cool, he was absent-minded, and he said what he had in mind, no barrier. So it was not so easy at home in Ben Yehuda Street. Over the years, the relations between Mishi and Yosef continued to be very problematic. That's a story. I really don't want to speak too much about it. Anyway, Mishi was drafted into the Armor Group Corps in the summer of 1953. On Independence Day, 1955, he was invited to the president's house as an outstanding soldier. Mishi was a person to do always the best he could. He took also part in the Sinai battle in 1956. Here you see a photo from the military parade on Independence Day, 1956 in Tel Aviv. Every year until, I think the last one was after the 6 days war. On Independence Day was a parade through the main streets of Tel Aviv. You can see Mishi sitting on the middle, on the second row, the third from right. Mishi was recommended to officers' course, but he did not want to. He didn't want to become an officer. He actually, in his character, he was a pacifist and hated the army. In those days, he believed, as most, that our army's aim was indeed to defend the country, the young country, to defend our families. But to become an officer, he refused. So the chief of the armor corps himself, Gorodish, summoned him for a motivational talk. So eventually Mishi accepted, said yes, and became an officer. Too bad. Because of the situation in our home in Tel Aviv, on free weekends, Mishi hardly slept with us. He stayed usually in the villa of one of his close friends from the time of high school, Linda Gesundheit. This is very painful for me to think about. Whenever Mishi, since high school, whenever he came home to Ben Yehuda, he was from the street, from down, we lived on the third floor. From the street, he used to whistle to Mommy an over to the beginning of something by Berlioz. I'm not a good singer. It was like this. Ta 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 ta. As I said before, since Mishi remembered himself, he knew that he was going to be an architect. During high school summer vacations, he worked in the engineering department of Tel Aviv municipality as a draftsman. With every penny he had, he used to buy architecture books, mostly used in no matter which language. And we two, he and I, were going over them together on the sofa in the living room. He had this extraordinary hobby of creating buildings from rubbers, from erasers, with the razor. Lots of patience. He turned them to be high risers and all sorts of forms sticking one to another. He stuck needles on the roofs like antennas. He then took several buildings on the head. He glued them on the lid of a shoebox, created streets with trees that he made from matches with cotton wool dipped in green ink. He used to give such buildings as birthday presents to friends. Unfortunately, I don't have any. And of course, eventually, he was accepted to the Technion. Here you can see the photos of a model he built during his studies of a villa, and took the photos in the open area. During his studies, Mishi had to earn some money. And it was not simple, since architecture studies take a lot of time, much work after school. He was volunteering to Magen David at nights, to shifts in Magen David, and did all kinds of works that he could find. Friedel arranged for him to accompany an old man who used to take crazy long walks. The photo appeared on the cover. The photo you see appeared on the cover of a health magazine. For Mishi, architecture was an art, a sublime art. Definitely not a science. He hated the parts that had to do with calculations. He was also very talented in painting and photos taking. He was really an artist in his soul. He also loved all sorts of music, from classical to jazz. He took me to the performances of Ella Fitzgerald and of Yves Montand in Tel Aviv Music Hall. When we walked together in the streets, he used to hold my hand and sing, shaming me. Here you can see two drawings that he made while walking with the painting album in the streets of Jerusalem, and also a photograph of a tree in Geneva. Mishi worked one summer on summer vacation in Jerusalem with Nomi in the architecture office of Nomi's brother, Danny Brin. In 1961, Mishi graduated the Technion and became an architect. He got a job in a big architect office in Geneva, the Honegger Frères. They remembered my father from working together in some projects, and they were really happy to exciting to work. Here is a photo of Mishi that I took in Gan Atzmaut Independence Garden in Tel Aviv when I got a camera. Mishi lived in Geneva for 2 years. He rented a flat, I guess small, and none of us visited him there. It was, at the times, it was not very easy to go on trips overseas from Israel. But he told us about it. He described he built furniture from, he said, from wood cases. And he said that the style was Louis Caisse. Caisse means in French wood box. And compared them to the style of Louis XV, who was King Louis XV. You can see here are 2 photos. One of the Villa Honegger, where the architect office was, where he worked during the 2 years in Geneva, and also a photo of the building where we lived in Geneva for 15. The family lived for 15 years in Avenue Frontenay. I think we lived on the first floor with we had a balcony with a small garden. Later, the street was widened on account of the garden. During his stay in Geneva, Mishi managed to buy a small Fiat and traveled in Europe. He went to Milano, to Italy, to Firenze. He often visited Martin in Paris. Martin was the age 1 year younger than Puli, 1 year older than Mishi, and her family, her parents, and she and her brother, small brother, they during the World War they moved to Geneva and became very close friends with my family. So Mishi often, a few times, went to Paris. I know that he also visited Barcelona, maybe, I'm not sure, with Eva too. When we, Mommy and the 3 of us, when we immigrated to Israel in 1945, we went by train to Barcelona and there stayed in a hotel for a few days until we could embark the ship to Israel. Anyway, if I'm not wrong, Mishi went to this hotel, found our names in the guest book. The manager of the hotel was the same, and he was very excited from the meeting and invited Mishi to stay there for free for a few days. Here you can see photos, 4 photos of Mishi from the time he lived in Geneva. Mishi also loved to ski. Once he even broke his leg, unfortunately, so you see him here with his skis. Actually, Mishi always liked to do some gymnastics, even when he was back in Israel and already married to Eva, living in Ramat HaSharon, he used to take gym lessons. Mishi met Eva in Geneva. Actually, the connection was made by Nurit, so in the Zoom meeting she can speak about it herself. She knew someone, she was working there then in an architect office in Tel Aviv, and there was an architect who was going to Geneva, so she gave him Mishi's telephone address, This architect was from Australia, a good friend of Eva. So this way they met, if I'm not wrong. In the summer, end of summer 1963, Mishi returned to Israel with Eva. I remember them going down from the ship in the harbor of Haifa. I was very, very excited to see them. Eva had to go back to Sydney for a few months, and then she came back to stay. Her mother too came for the wedding. She was a very, very nice woman, Magda. And there you see the photos from the small, humble wedding. The wedding was in the Wingate Institute, which was established and managed by Baruch Bag, our uncle. I will speak about Mishi's work as an architect during the years 63 to 67, as far as I know. At first, he joined the office of a well-known architect in Tel Aviv, Nachum Zolotov. The office was in Ben Yehuda Street, and in the same building, also a famous journalist, Uri Avneri, lived. He then decided to go into politics and created a party. I guess most of the architects who were working in this office supported him with enthusiasm. In fact, also Yossi, my husband, was one of Uri Avneri's followers, and eventually Uri Avneri became a member of the parliament, of the Knesset. After some time, Mishi left the office and joined Ezra Sharon as partner. Ezra Sharon studied architecture with Mishi. He was a few years older, already had family with 2 children. Lived in Ramat HaSharon. Together, they designed the culture house, the assembly house in Rishpon, a village close to Ramat HaSharon. Here you see the photo of the building. Actually, the job was given to another architect, a couple, Danny and Emanuela Gat, but they had to leave, they went abroad. So Danny Gat, who worked with, who studied also with Mishi, decided to give it over to Mishi, whom he very much appreciated. The building was almost finished when the 6 Days War began. So the building was inaugurated only at the end of 67 or 68, I don't remember. Anyway, the family and friends donated money, and with the money we ordered a big oil painting on wood from a known Israeli artist. His name was Tzvi Milstein. Quite a big painting, which in the inauguration, whom we attended all, was hung on the wall in the lobby. And we told Tzvi Milstein about Mishi's life, and he drew elements from Mishi's life. I remember there was the Lake of Geneva. At the bottom of the painting, he wrote a short poem, I guess Japanese, I couldn't find the origin, And if I'm not wrong, it was a poem that Ezra chose. And in free translation, it says, far from home, evening is coming down, autumn wind is blowing, and the wild geese in the sky are screaming. Unfortunately, we could not find a photo of the painting. There was an accident. Something exploded in a not far away weapon factory, and the building was damaged, and the painting was destroyed. We only found a piece of wood from, I think, the bottom of this beautiful painting. I read in the paper that this artist passed away a couple of years ago. I tried to find him, to locate him, to find out whether he had a copy of the painting. I found him living in Paris, old man, just about 6 years ago. We talked, and he promised to try and look for a copy in his archives in Rhodes or Paris or wherever. But unfortunately, nothing came out of it. A few months before Mishi was drafted in '67, he opened an office of his own in Tel Aviv. As far as I recall, he was negotiating planning of a hotel in Cyprus. Well, I'm pretty sure, definite, that Mishi would have become a great architect. Eva and Mishi bought a small flat in Ramat HaSharon. David was born in April '65, and Dorit was born in October '66. Here are two photos, one with David and the other maybe with Dorit as babies. And they were both beautiful children. And Mishi was very, very happy when they were born. I remember the summer after David was born, I went to Europe during the summer vacation from uni, and with some money Mishi gave me too from his savings in francs, in Swiss francs. He gave me a lot of David's pictures, and he said, show them to everybody, show them how beautiful my son is. Today's Monday, and I have to finish the recording, and unfortunately someone is renovating his apartment here in this building, and there might be a background noise which maybe fit the almost last part of this presentation, the sad part. In May '67, Egypt closed the Straits of Tiran in the Red Sea, so the ships could not reach the port of Eilat. There was a general army recruitment of reserves. Mishi was drafted with his soldiers to Sinai. The waiting period began. Mishi initiated and designed a synagogue in the desert in the shape of Magen David, so I was told. The war broke out, as you know, on June 6 and ended shortly afterwards, after 6 days. Mishi, sometime afterwards, arrived home for a short vacation and had to go back to the canal. Several letters he wrote from that period of the time he spent in the desert were published in the volume D, the fourth volume of the memorial publication by the Ministry of Defense. Also the drawings and the photo of the tree that I showed before are also in that same volume. Well, in one of the letters which he wrote to a friend, just a second, he wrote to a very good Norwegian friend who studied in the Technion 1 year. His name was Bjorn. I remember him, tall, handsome man. He wrote to him, "I write to you from the shore of the Suez Canal. Now we will be able to visit the old city of Jerusalem and other places like you did as a foreigner. The price was too high." Mishi mentions in the letter an architect student who studied 1 year before them in the Technion, and he writes to this friend that, do you remember this man? He was killed in the war and left 2 children. And then he continues in the letter, my children grow up fast. They are lovely and wild, real tzabars. Tzabar is an Israeli-born child. You can imagine how much I miss them. In another letter to family friends in Geneva, he wrote, among others, your letter full of concern and sympathy touched my heart. In a few days, I will finally go home after 50 days of service. Excuse me. The situation in Sinai was calm. The officers' wives were invited to spend the weekend with their husbands near the canal, and of course among them Eva. It was on Saturday, July 8, that the visit was suddenly interrupted by Egyptians when the Egyptians started fire. We have some photos from that day, or maybe from the Friday before. Here they are. Last time I saw Mishi was when he was on vacation. He stepped out from our apartment in Ben Yehuda, and he said to me, "Oh, I still owe you a present for your birthday." My birthday was in May. What perhaps comforts me a little bit is that Mishi really believed that he was defending his family, whom he loved so much, not only the country. I loved him and adored him. He was my wonderful big brother. To end this presentation, here is a photo of Mishi and Eva with the children, maybe a short a short time before on the seashore. Now we kept something very exciting to end the presentation. It's a very, very short episode from the movie made on Ben Shemen. It was Hanukkah in Ben Shemen, December 47. Mishi was then 12 years old. And he was chosen to light the Hanukkah. I also show you a photo of Puli at that time because you can see her sitting on the aisle after the lighting of the Hanukkah. Well, this is it. As I said, you can see the whole movie online. Tomorrow's wonderful day.
הנרות הללו אנו מדליקים על הניסים ועל הנפלאות, על התשועות ועל המלחמות שעשית לאבותינו בימים ההם בזמן הזה.